Hi, welcome back to Psych with Sarah. And today's question was about stress, pressure, and burnout. Now, look, I do have a course on my online self-help sessions if you want to really dig deep into this one. So I'm not going to kind of go right through it because there's a really great space for you to learn more about that on my online courses. But what I want to do is talk about the beginnings of that, because that's where we fail to pick up the signs and the messages that we are really not coping so well. So let's talk about pressure. So let's get an understanding of pressure, because that's where it starts. And when we fail to recognize the symptoms of pressure, both physically and emotionally, what we do is kind of set us up for a domino effect. So the more pressure we accept and take on and feel is acceptable for us to manage, or feel that we can't say no to or don't recognize, the harder it is to kind of stop that domino effect. And all of a sudden, we're in stress mode and then we're in burnout mode. So let's have a little look, and I'll screen share again, see how we go, and we'll talk about pressure. Okay, so let's talk about pressure. Most of us understand pressure to be a negative experience, but it's one of those emotional states and life skills that actually can bring a lot of really positive rewards. The trick on pressure is to know where your cutoff line is, and that takes some insight and some level of self-awareness to understand what actually makes my pressure bomb, go off. And what makes it really work hard. So this is a really quick pressure test for you that you might like to have a go at. The first question is, do you believe that you have a one chance at getting it right? Like that, like if I was doing this right now, that if I didn't get it right the first time, my career would fall apart, or no one would ever watch anything I ever do again. So a pressure test is connected to our belief system about how important this one moment, this one chance, this one job, this one thing, this one relationship really is going to be in our life. The second pressure test question is if you believe your reputation, relationship, safety, or success will be on the line if you don't succeed. So I have one go at this, and that my success in these areas of reputation, relationship, safety, work life, whatever it is on the line in this one moment as well. So that those are two things that would lead to our pressure kind of bomb. The third is if you believe you feel like you have to deliver perfect results. So I've got one chance at this. My success as a human being rides on this, and it has to be perfect. So if you're going, yep, I believe in that, then your pressure coping mechanisms are always going to fail at some stage, because this expectation is unreal. It's inhuman. No one can function at that level all the time, in every way. And what you're going to see, what happens is we avoid pressure and we avoid challenges and risks because the outcome has too high a consequence for us. So I always say, let's find your sweet spot. So there's always a sweet spot where pressure just makes you, kill it. You're so good at it. And that can only be determined by you. So a sweet spot is your best area of performance, be it at work, at study, in relationships, just in life in general. And this is how you can measure it. When our pressure levels are very low, we as human beings become quite unchallenged and bored and unmotivated. And if you're feeling unchallenged, bored, and unmotivated, and have a healthy mental health presentation, then you're probably under pressured at the moment. And that means you're more likely to leave the relationship, you're more likely to leave your job, you're more likely to put less effort in, you're more likely to feel unhappy and uncomfortable and restless in your life. On the other side of that lovely sweet spot is if you are feeling overwhelmed, unhappy and struggling. So that means that you can't keep up, that it is becoming too much. You don't have enough time in the day, that you think you're failing, that you're not meeting the basic requirements you expect of yourself in life and in work and in relationships. And you're really starting to feel a sense of internal devaluing, that you're not worthy, that you're not capable, that somehow you've become inadequate in this role, whatever that would be in your life. So those are the measurements. On one side, if we're getting bored and unmotivated, it's like a warning sign. You need to amp the pressure up. And on the other side, if you're feeling overwhelmed and starting to feel unhappy, you need to drop the pressure down. And it's in that beautiful balance we find the sweet spot. And the sweet spot is where we have enough pressure to feel great, to feel capable, to feel worthy, to be excited, and to feel a bit under the pump, where our brains can often work the best, but not so much that we're starting to drown in the expectation. And of course, what we looked at before, those three components of the pressure test, is if I have all those three, I can't find a sweet spot, because I will always see myself as failing, or continually to strive beyond what would be a healthy level in life. So what does high to extreme pressure really look like for you? Well, under extreme pressure, our emotional state goes into what we call a threat state. And that is where we waste essential brain power worrying about our performance rather than actually performing. So a threat state is where we feel threatened by what we're doing. We feel that it is a risk to us, it is dangerous to us. Our emotions kind of go into overdrive, and that's when we make careless mistakes. In other words, we become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm worried through my perfectionistic traits and experiences that I'm not good enough, that I can't do it, that success will determine my whole life ahead of me. And because of that high pressure and extreme pressure that I'm applying to whatever task I'm doing right now, I'm more inclined to make careless mistakes. Why? Because my brain power is used to worry about my performance rather than actually giving the performance I require. So the more productive under acute pressure equals results are going to be worse. And that means what we need is for you to worry less about the performance, inverted commas, and more about what you are doing and what's happening in the moment and what is it you're trying to achieve, and less about how you are doing it. So if we can simplify that down for you a bit. So think of it like this. We experience pressure when we have stressful moments that matter. And that's a good thing, okay? We experience pressure when we have stressful moments that matter to us, and things should matter to us. We should feel the pressure. We should want to do our best and succeed and give it our all and make someone happy and do what we can to have a fulfilling life. So it's not a bad thing to experience pressure and to have stress, because it matters. It is a problem if we move that into another arena where it's all that matters. So factors that affect how are we going to handle pressure, right? Well, let's look at personality. Always a great area of psychology to play in. Our introverts, our lovely introverts out there who are amazing thinkers and creative sorts and the great listeners of the world. Lower levels of pressure are good for you because you learn to understand your limits. So that sets in boundaries and allows you to, do what all great introverts need to do, and that is recharge. Allow yourself time to get away and recharge. And if possible, for introverts, it's good to prep ahead of time for high pressure situations. Most introverts, and I'm not saying all introverts, especially not the blend of extro and intros, but most aren't very good on the hop. So spontaneous talking off the cuff isn't really a sweet spot, but having enough knowledge, enough prep to understand what you're doing, what the aim of whatever you're doing is about, will allow you to have a comfort zone within your discomfort. Because of course, being under pressure, being seen, being noted, being viewed, being observed isn't an introvert's best space. It's not what they thrive on, but absolutely capable of doing it. If your personality is more of an extrovert, you need higher levels of pressure. So the idea is to find your sweet spot is avoid getting into ruts at work. And that means you, not others. You will need to seek ways to challenge and motivate yourself. Break up your daily routine as much as you can, even if that is just going a different way to work. Just break up the monotony that you can feel in relationships or in work roles or in uni or in life in general, and get busy with discovering novel activities, things that can increase your interest and motivation in what you're doing. So when we look at that, here's the sweet spot. In introvert, we like to keep it curving on the lower end of pressure, and on extrovert, we like to curve it up a bit more on the higher end. But knowing your sweet spot and knowing your personality style is really important in beginning to work out, how do I make stress and pressure work for me and make me appear into the world as in my optimum. And I think that's a really fun exercise to get into. The other factor would be self-perception. So self-confident people like higher levels of pressure. They require it because they like to understand where their limits are, but you also need to self-check your capability. So very confident people can often think they can take on the world. Like they believe they can give everything a shot and they will probably succeed, which is wonderful and fantastic. But that can also lead to misinterpreting adrenaline in something to be something desirable, when if you don't break that adrenaline down or have a break from it in itself, it can be toxic, can become quite harsh on the body and create stress and burnout. So if you're a very confident person and you pump under higher levels of pressure, know your limitations, understand where you need to step back or delegate or just have a rest, and self-check your capabilities. Am I up for this task? How many things have I got on my plate at the moment? How much more can I really take on before there's going to be some psychosomatic issue with me? It might be starting to not sleep or not eating properly or overworking. There'll be avoidance mechanisms, something like that. If your self-perception is self-critical, then these lower levels of pressure can be where your sweet spot may be pushed and pulled around. Watch your self-talk. Keep the pressure level at a very manageable space, and reframe and recast what you're saying to yourself. So watch that your stress levels do not go up too high, that your pressure is good, it's in that sweet spot, but don't let it creep over, because you will get quickly overwhelmed and then start that kind of dialogue in your head about how hopeless you are, that other people can manage this and you can't, and all that very, very self-critical chatter that isn't helpful to us unless we do it in a very constructive way. Skill level. So when you're in the learning phase, we are often under lots of pressure. We're trying to absorb lots of knowledge, very task orientated. We are challenged and growing. So higher levels of pressure are on us, and that means we need to be aware of it. We are under this very challenging growth kind of situation while we're trying to absorb and become better at what we're doing. When we've mastered a skill, lower levels of pressure can be problematic for us, because it will lead to loss of engagement and we need new pressures. So if you've been in a same job for a long time, you might gotten into a bit of a lull, and look around for ways that you can increase your pressure to hit that sweet spot again. Remember, what we don't want is boredom and feeling restless and unhappy because there's no pressure. So let's have a little think about that. All in all, to get your sweet spot of pressure, are you overworked? Right? Check your current sources of pressure. remove some of the demands, and reassess what's truly critical. So if your sweet spot is going into overwhelming and I'm becoming unhappy and I'm starting to doubt my capabilities, use these 3 points. What are my current sources of pressure? Remove some of the demands around that. And the demands also means your internal demands about, remember that 3 pressure test right at the beginning. You know, am I telling myself that my whole life depends on this one task? Am I perfectionistic? I can't fail. I can't not do it absolutely right. And what is my beliefs around pressure? And reassess what's truly critical. Not everything is urgent. Not everything has to be done today. Not everything has to be done right now. If you're underworked and your sweet spot is going down the other way, where you're getting quite bored, shorten your deadlines yourself. You know, take personal responsibility and ownership over your life. So if you work better under a little bit more pressure, but you've got a 3-month deadline, bring it up to 1.5 months. Put yourself under the pressure where you know your sweet spot will hit, and take on additional responsibilities. Look around and think, look, I've got time on my hand. I don't feel under pressure at the moment. I'm feeling a bit restless, bored. Maybe I'll take on a few other jobs, help people out in the team, or help my partner out, or volunteer, or do some charity work, just to lift that pressure on myself up to where I function at my most optimum level. So how do we crack under pressure? That's a question a lot of people ask me. Overthinking. All right. Where we overthink what we're doing, the more we worry, in other words, the more we create that threat state, and we overthink versus going on autopilot. So an example of that would be overthinking, say, going on a date. So say I've got a new relationship, so I've done the swiping, we're meeting somewhere, and I'm going on a date. I'm starting to overthink the date. Now, what this really is 2 people meeting up on a bizarre app, and we don't know each other really. We have no connection other than this app. We haven't been in person. We don't know our energy levels. I don't know whether they raise their eyebrow too much when they're talking to me, whatever it is. We start to overthink what this one cup of coffee date is really going to be. It is not an introduction to marriage, 3 kids, and whatever else you want going on in your life. It is not the love of your life. What it is a meeting of 2 human beings over coffee. And if we seem to like each other enough, we'll do it again. Yep. That means I can go on autopilot. I can be myself. I can relax. I can just be who I am. They get a nice example of, who I am in an everyday situation, and I can drop down my anxiety. My threat state can go down, and I won't overthink everything that is said. I won't get the icks over everything. And I actually can sit in this space and really have an objective experience of whether I think this person is nice, rather than being in this hyper state of overthinking everything that's happening, everything I'm saying and everything they're saying. Okay, that means I'll crack under pressure. I need to stay calm. Control is another crack under pressure thing. And control means every action and reaction has to be perfect, or it's not done at all. And when we try and control everything, what we do is become inauthentic and unnatural. So the more that you try and control how everyone receives you, how the night, if we use the same example, the night goes on, the less we are being authentic, the less we are concerned about what is actually happening, and the more we become obsessed about is my hair staying perfectly nice? Did the meal meet my expectations? Have they used the right knife and fork the right way? Control is a great escape route for people in ways that no one is perfect, no situation is going to be perfect. And in fact, the more imperfect it is, the more memorable and funny it can become, and create a really great memory for years to come. So overthinking, control are ways of cracking under pressure. Okay, so that's a brief, but I hope interesting way of looking at pressure and understanding there is a sweet spot to pressure. And when you get that sweet spot, it feels great, and you'll know what it feels like. It's like you're in the zone, like it becomes this kind of exciting effortlessness to be where you are and what you're doing. And it's exhilarating. And sometimes when we hit the sweet spot, we like it so much that, we try and stay in there, and we add more and we add more, because we think if I keep putting the pressure on myself, I can sustain this great feeling of being in the zone. And that's wrong, because then we'll tip into overwhelming and putting too much pressure on. So the art of making pressure your friend and mastering it is really about knowing that sweet spot and exactly where that pressure starts and ends, and how to kind of keep moving yourself in that spot, setting boundaries, recognizing the risk factors, knowing how you feel when you hit the sweet spot versus how you feel when you're have too little pressure or too much pressure. So, my challenge for you is to try and be in tune with that sweet spot. Look at pressure as something that you seek, that is very good for us and really helps us cope with life and manage life's challenges. And see if you can find your sweet spot. It can be a bit hard, but I'm sure if you keep at it, you'll try. Okay, I hope that answered a little question about, how to manage pressure or what is pressure. And I'll see you next time. Okay, stay well until then.